Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Jeff Heilman Project. In today's episode, we're going to go through that number one value out of the 9. This whole entire episode is dedicated to the subject called faith. Whether you're a believer, a non-believer, we all believe in something. We're faith that this chair is going to hold us up. The chair that I'm sitting in is going to hold me up. Thomas Aquinas, the Italian philosopher, said, "To one who has faith, no explanation is necessary. To one without faith, no explanation is possible."
Wow.
I really love that. So what we're talking about today is faith, and it's about how if you have even just a little bit of it, anything can seem possible. If you choose to live without it, nothing can be explainable.
That's really good.
How did faith make the top of your list as one of your values? And we don't, I mean,
well,
just
first of all, I want to make
have,
sure and say that there is a secular audience
absolutely
that's listening to this. There's going to be potentially a Christian audience. There might be Jewish. Yep. There might be folks that are of the Muslim faith. And I hope that there are, because
100%.
My goal is to add value to people.
And I would hope that they can
one
understand that this episode is dedicated to why have faith,
exactly.
Not that anybody has a specific faith.
And it's also to explain, particularly to the secular portion of the audience of this show, is that people can have faith even if they are not religious, even if they don't subscribe to any particular belief or dogma. But I want to talk about what faith is, and I want to what it is to me.
Yes,
this is my experience, but hopefully that experience would give a voice to other people who may not be able to put a word or be able to describe it.
Well, it's unique to human beings.
It is.
Dogs don't have faith. Birds can't have faith.
They got faith that they're going to find something to eat.
Exactly.
Maybe,
they go on instinct, and we know that they're creatures of habit. But human beings have this amazing ability to see the impossible, to have, and that's what faith is, right? Faith is being able to see things that aren't seeable. It's like It's like being able to see with your eyes closed or see in the dark. I mean, Helen Keller said what an awful thing it is that when somebody who's been given the gift of sight cannot see, right? Like, she could see where her life was going. We can see, based on these previous episodes that we've recorded, like, we can see the trajectory of what happens when you have a daily checklist and you know what your values are. And if you put on that top of your value, faith, for you, Jeff Heilman and the Jeff Heilman Project, how did faith, what to you, if you were going to put it, what's your day? It's the first thing on your list. What does one of the things regarding faith on your list that you have to check out?
Let's talk about that. And this is a single piece of paper with a lot of stuff on it. And so I got to pull out my reader glasses. So my number one box, we'll talk about the first 2 because they're both really related to faith. So first of all, let's define faith. As one verse says, that faith is the substance of things hoped for. So let's talk about that. Something that is substantive. If something is substantive, it means it exists. And yet, if it's the substance of things hoped for, it means it exists, but we don't have it yet. So whatever that is, I don't care if it's a cheeseburger or $1 million house, if you have a belief inside of you that something exists and that it's on its way, there's a hope, there's a reaching, there's a striving. I was thinking about that a little bit earlier today about how I have a couple of nice pens, and I'm writing constantly, and we have refills for these pens. And when I run out of ink, the first thing I can think of is picturing myself at the store getting a refill, because these particular refills, you can buy them online, but sometimes
it's just better in the store.
It's faster in the store. I could drive and I can have my refill in 30 minutes. And as soon as I run out, I think, oh shoot, I'm out and I need to go. And I picture myself in the store buying refills for my pen. That picturing in yourself and the hunger, and there's a chemical neurological reaction in your body having to do with dopamine, making you hungry to go get that refill at the store, or hungry to get a cheeseburger or what have you. That is faith. It's the picture in your mind of something that you know you want. It's the dopamine hit that says, I'm hungry for this thing that I gotta get my refill for my pen. That combined spiritually with that substantive hope or expectation of the thing that you can see in your mind. That's what we're talking about with faith, right? We can save dogmatic explanations and religious persuasions and church affiliations for another day. But as far as what faith is, it's that hunger or wanting or driving or needing to accomplish something. It could be a material goal. It could be a physical goal with regard to making love. It could be dating somebody or finding somebody special in your life. It could be getting a job. It could be getting a deal closed. But it's something that's out there in the future that you don't physically possess right now, but spiritually you believe it. And so if we look at what faith means from a doing perspective, on my list, I've got faith period, number one. Faith period is a way of cleansing the mechanism spiritually of what it is that we go through all day when we take the hits at work and do what we need to do to get our business moved forward. And so for me, a faith period is a quiet meditation time. I review my goals. I review a couple of poems and meditation. I go through this card. This is like my faith card. And a really good description of a faith period is in chapter 7, 30 Golden Minutes of Glenn Bland's book, Success, the Glenn Bland Method. Glenn Bland was an interesting guy. He was in the life insurance business, and he's flying home to Waco, Texas one day from San Antonio, and he stumbles across a book in a bookstore called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I'm sure most of the folks on this podcast have heard of Think and Grow Rich, but if you haven't, Think and Grow Rich is effectively the standard for self-help in the 1930s.
I went to the bank the other day, and they have this stack of like 5 books, and one of them was Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich.
And I said, oh my gosh, because it was the personal help teller person, not a teller, but the personal help assistant. I was like, that's a great book. Have you read that? And she's like, actually, no, they put these in all of the offices, the same stack of these 5 books. But I thought, wow, to have Think and Grow Rich, like this is this.
It was
impact.
written in 1936.
Even if it's a book that just is there to be looked at because it would indicate smart or advancement or achievement, there it is at my bank in my teller. I took a picture and I sent you the picture. Like, look, there it is. Like, we'd read all 5 of the books that were in each one.
Great.
That's funny.
That's always nice when you get validation from seeing that somebody else that we bank with values those 5 books, right?
Same 5 books.
But he reads Think and Grow Rich, and he realizes this occurrence comes to him, and I can digest this nugget and hand it to all of you today. The nugget that he pulled away was that people who make plans dictate to other people what they need them to do to help them.
Who don't make plans.
And people who don't make plans are dictated to. Yeah. And he goes, I don't have a plan, which is why my life stinks right now. I need to get a plan in place. And so definite, finite, specific, detailed plans, like what I'm trying to live my life by here, it makes such a difference in the quality of people's lives, because now that I know what the plan is, people will show up in my life to ask me what they can do to help me. People have showed up in my life to ask me if they can be on the podcast. People have showed up in my life to ask me if they can help with funding or sponsorships. People have showed up in my life to help with the work that I'm doing in my job, with the projects that I'm running and the deals that I'm working on. So it's not that if you don't have a plan, you can't be successful. I think people's plans can have different varieties of complication. But faith period for me is a review of the plan. It's a review of scripture. It is the reviewing of my theme for the year, which is that everybody buys everything. I sell a suite of products, and I want to help all of my customers buy everything that we sell every single year. And when I've done that, then my job will be done. And like Mary Poppins, I'll change when the wind changes, right? And we'll float off to the next opportunity. But in order to do that, we need everybody to buy everything, or work toward that goal. And we sell the best products in the world. So I have full force of will behind that objective until people tell me that they don't need it or they have something else that they like better. The next part is the phrase, do it now. Do it now comes from W. Clement Stone and Napoleon Hill's work, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. And I forget which chapter it's in, but he talks about the success prompter of do it now, that one of the three things that you need to be successful, according to W. Clement Stone, is inspiration to action. And the way that he used do it now was as a self-motivating prompter. And I also next to it have the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins. And that's basically a countdown in order to do something. And that there's things that she goes into the study on impact theory. Great interview with Mel Robbins on impact theory, talking about the 5-second rule. The next is the word slow. And that reminds me that slow is fast. And there's a, I was playing in a tournament years ago at somewhere in Alabama or Florida. And it was this
all those southern states, they just kind of
blend together for me. I love people that live in those areas, but they're all hot and muggy and they all have Holiday Inns.
Yes.
And there's always a pool
breakfast.
there, continental breakfast, right? And that was when I was just so poor and just trying to scrape together another $1,000 to pay for entry fees and plane tickets. And thanks to my friends at Southwest Airlines who have helped with buddy passes on some of those times when I just didn't have any money. But I'm sitting at this pool, and I always try to jump in the pool when I get on an airplane. It just helps me settle my mind. And I'm at this Holiday Inn, and it's like 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. And this guy, I'm in the pool, and there's a guy sitting outside the pool in a chaise lounge, and he's got these two kids that are probably 6 and 8 years old, and they're running, in the pool. And he says, and it's this very thick Southern accent, and he goes, kids, no running in the pool. He says, remember, slow is fast, slow is fast. And I'm like, What does that mean? I'm hooked. I'm excited. I want to figure out what slow is fast means. And I said, sir, do you mind if I ask you what you mean by slow is fast? And he said, well, when I was in the Army, I had to take my M16 apart under a stopwatch. We had to do it in less than 60 seconds. And then when we got good at it, we had to do it blindfolded. And I'm like, wow, that's really something. Yeah. How did you learn how to do it? And he said, well, we had this phrase that said that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so slow is fast. And so that's what we say, slow is fast. We just reiterated that over and over, because the slower we would go, the more we would get the muscle memory down on how to take that M16 apart and put it back together. And you got to be able to do that blindfolded, because sometimes when you're in a field, it's dark and there's no moon out. And you might be in 2 feet of water and your gun jams, and you got to take it apart and put it back together in the dark, and you can't see anything. So you got to do it by feel. And he said, so we do it slow, and that would be smooth. And then we get faster at it, and then we'd be able to do it blindfolded, and then we'd make the 60-second timer to be able to take that thing apart. And I just stood there stunned in the pool going, that's one of the coolest things I've ever thought about, and I'm going to have a daily discipline where I remember that. So to me, I remember that guy. I remember the way he talked and his certainty in proposing that we go through our lives slow, smooth, methodical. And I get a lot of grief from people. Sometimes I had a guy, he was honking at me. I was making a right-hand turn to get into where I'm trying to go, and then I come to the stop sign, and then I make a left hand to go into our street that we're on. And this guy's like tailgating right behind me, and it's a Friday night. He obviously wants to get home. And then I go and I slow down and I turn on my turn signal to get into the driveway, and he's trying to go around me and pass me in a residential street going left, and I'm like, I'm trying to make a left-hand turn into my driveway. I will be out of his way in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
He's not going to have to wait much longer, and I'm making a clear indicator that I'm going to turn. And he tries to go around me, and I see him in my rearview mirror, and so I just make my left-hand turn. He honks on me. He's honking at me because he can't pass me in a residential street while I'm making a left-hand turn to get into my driveway. Mm-hmm. You know, that's an example to me of somebody they're compromised in their thinking, right?
Yeah.
And we all get to that point. We're all Karens sometimes, whether it's our latte is too hot or because somebody's trying to make a left-hand turn in front of us to get to their house. Mm-hmm. You know, how dare they do that thing when I'm trying to pass them so I can get to my house, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's part of faith, right? That there's a growing season, so I'm told, for any type of plant, corn or apples or anything else. I'm told that it's a 90-day growing season for corn. And yet at the 85-day mark, corn is only about this big. And for those of us listening, it's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. Well, a full ear of corn needs to be, 12, 14 inches to be full and have the full-size kernels in there. But at 85 days, 5 days before it's ready to be harvested, it's only like 2.5, 3 inches long. Not even close. I mean, those are the ones that are pickled and end up in a jar, right? Are the ones that you pluck at 85 days. So there's a pace and a rhythm to things. That's part of faith. And that recognizing that natural rhythm, that the goal of life is not to increase its speed. The goal of life is to make progress and to have certainty in an understanding of the pace of seed time and harvest and contribution. And that by really doubling down on an understanding of slow is fast, let's stick to the pace, let's not try to rush things too much. And by going and proceeding along at an even pace, that we can accomplish a lot. And Rockefeller talks that in his book, Titan. I'll have to find that quote, but he effectively said, you know, don't hurry. You'd be amazed what you can get accomplished if you go along at an even pace. So slow is fast is part of that. And then that's in that first line item. And then the next one is, the next one is the concept of a single mile marker. I talked about this on the other one. A single mile marker. Right now I've got, and it's on my list and it's in black ink and it's it's got a square around it in red ink of the deal and the day that I want to close that deal. And I'm working on that deal right now. And we want to get that closed. And I think about that. And this is my checkbox. I have to check the box.
So these are all like
four times a day, every day.
Under the heading of faith.
This is under the heading of faith.
These are like the subcategories.
These are the subcategories. And I check these off 4 times a day, every single day. Do I remember that I'm focused on faith and that I'm trying to have everybody in my territory buy everything that we sell and working toward that goal? That I'm focused on the word, that I'm doing it now. I want to do it now, do it now, do it. I'm reading, doing it. If I think of something and I'm inspired to do it, I either need to take a reminder for it and put it down or do it. If it's a quick thing, I just do it right then. And I'm conditioning myself every day to break down that hesitation, break down the barrier of entry to taking action. I even said, and we'll get into this another day, but one of my good friends, Mike Williams, wrote a book called Doing to Done, and he talks about mass productivity can be broken down into a beat of time, like in a beat or a measure in music, and that you go into that beat. It's in, do, and win. In, do, and win. And he suggested, and I do this to this day, that you start setting a timer based on the duration of the beat, either a 15-minute timer, a 5-minute timer, or a 45-minute timer. And so I do. I set 5-minute timers throughout all the day. And every time that timer goes off, I kind of restructure myself, take a deep breath, and I go, okay, did I accomplish what I set out to accomplish 5 minutes ago?
Yeah. And
I'm breaking this down. And a good friend of mine, Vince Temporino, I've been sharing that discipline, and he's done it well. We're breaking down the barrier of entry for taking action to as close to zero as we can get it. So I'll take a breath, I'll set that timer, and while it's clicking, while it's going, or crickets or whatever I've got, and I'll hit reset. And it goes again, and I take a deep breath, and I go, and it starts 4:58, 4:57, 4:56, and I'm thinking, I'm setting my intention for the next 5 minutes, like I'm going to be working on this checkbox with all of my focus. If the phone comes in, phone rings, whatever, I'll take a look at it if I can do it, but I'm focused on that 5-minute increment to check that next box. And it's just religious persistence of just constantly driving forward. That is the 5-second rule, or slow is fast. and going along the line of the mile marker. So that mile marker is that deal. That deal needs to come in. You and I sit and we pray over our deals every morning, and the timelines on those deals and the commissions that needs to happen as a result, and what we're going to do with that, and all the good that we're going to be able to do, and reinvesting and paying down bills.
I
and
love
stuff.
what Voltaire says. Voltaire says, faith consists in believing when it is beyond the power of reason to believe.
That's right.
So there's some situations where we come into in life where we've gotten a negative diagnosis from the doctor and they're like, you're terminal, or we've gotten these, you've got a tax bill for more than you make in a year, or we've got these situations that reason cannot but get you out of. And so what faith and what Voltaire is saying is that having hope, having faith, having some belief that you can't reason your way out of it, that what do you do? Where do you lean to? And what we're talking about here in this episode on faith is that we're leaning towards the faith of we're going to choose. We're going to choose whether we're going to lay down and die, or we're going to choose whether we're going to stand up and fight another day.
That's right.
And faith would say that we're going to stand up and fight another day when there's no reason. There's no reason to believe that we could stay married after all of our parents have been divorced. There's no reason to believe that we could have 7 children when in essence, you have one brother and I have a half sister. Like, there's no reason that would explain anything that we have ever done in our 27 years of marriage, because starting out as a checker or whatever, starting out at Fred Meyer in Oregon, or selling auto parts, to working at Fortune 50 companies and taking companies to acquisition and doing all of these wonderful things that you've been able to do. That has just been one day of faith after another day of faith after another day of faith.
Yeah, and if you look at
we decided to say we're not going to look at reason, because there's
right.
nothing reasonable about any of this. No. Even the situations we were born into, if you look at it, you go, there's nothing reasonable about, so how are we going to look at it? Are we going to look at it half full? Or are we going to look at it half empty? That's on us.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And there is evidence. There's evidence in all of us that there's more that we can do, but you got to get ready for battle, because if we forget about the haters, we don't need to talk about the haters, but let's talk about the hate that's out there.
Oh,
there is plenty of negative energy out there. People who are experiencing all kinds of setbacks, and one could say, well, gosh, it's a lot more evil in the world than it was before. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. What I do believe is that we hear about it more because we are inundated with media that is designed to be negative, so that it can trigger our response of like, hey, if it's negative, I want to know about it because it could hurt me. And in that, we lose concentrated attention and focus in what we're doing to try to make our lives better and to play offense. So faith is about playing offense.
Mm-hmm. Plato said you fight twice when you fight with faith. I love that.
You fight twice.
Yeah. So
that's great.
Plato's a super smart guy.
I love these quotes. Jessica. You're crushing it. Where are you getting these? Voltaire, Plato, and Thomas Aquino.
Yes, absolutely. What I'm looking for, I kind of lost my page here because I was so excited about that quote, is that what does it require? If you're somebody who's not been trained, I think that it would indicate that our propaganda, which is the things that we're listening to, the things that, social media now, we've got news coming at us. In many cases, it is not their job to inspire us to act in faith, because free thinkers are faithful thinkers. And if they can take away our free thinking and teach us, you need to buy this, you need to think like this, you need to think like that. It's not so much it's not on their manifesto to encourage the faithful and to encourage us into faith. So what does it require for you to shut out all the noise, to be able to be that person of faith that you want to be? Are you shutting out the outside world? Are you fasting? Are you just keeping up on current events? Like, what are you doing to stay faithful in a time when there's so much bombarding you with the antithesis of faith?
That's a very good question. And I would say that the answer to this question is as different for each leader as their name or what they do for a living. Pascal said that all problems can be solved by just sitting alone in a room by themselves. Or something is either that or all problems come to manifestation as being problems for those who can't sit alone in a room by themselves. I don't know which way the bias of the phrase went, but it effectively said, if you do this, you're going to have answers to problems. And if you don't do this, you're going to have problems manifest. Mm-hmm. So I spend a lot of time by myself. And I'm a fairly extroverted person. I need a lot of stimulation. I like conversations. I have tons of friends. I probably have 4 or 5 phone calls with friends a day because it's just interesting to me to check in and see what's going on.
A few episodes ago, we talked about how you'll just watch TV until the next show's on.
I'll just watch TV.
You sit down for 18 hours.
I'll just make do.
Quiet isn't necessarily your go-to.
But quiet is my go-to from a faith perspective. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about, even from a nature perspective, there is faith in a seed. Mm-hmm. By what force of nature does a seed get planted into a ground and become a tree? Faith. Faith is that unseen factor. And so when I'm alone, when I'm by myself, I'm in nature and I see the manifestation of the faith of the seed that has become that tree, or the seed that has become that crop, or the wind that blows by faith. I mean, by what energy source does the world turn perfectly at 24 hours periods and make rotations? I mean, I'm not trying to tell people what to believe here, but we got to understand we've got it pretty good. There's nowhere else in the universe that has a place that we have found that can sustain life the way that we live it here. I think I've heard it said that, like, God doesn't talk in clanging cymbals, but of smallest whisper. Small whispers, yeah. And we can't hear the small whispers if we're screaming at the top of our voices. That's right. So I spend a lot of time by myself, and I think in terms, if there's a theme or an emotion or an energy waveform, for me, it's gratitude. I think about you. I think about the kids and how grateful I am, and how I went from pretty difficult time as a teenager to, I feel like we live a Leave It to Beaver life, that we're the people that we say we are. We're consistent. There's parity between what we believe and what we do, what our values are and how we execute. And so that gratefulness kind of cleanses a lot of the nasty that gets thrown at me, like it gets thrown at everybody. Mm-hmm. There was a guy who said one time, this was a Stanford football coach who's consoling a recently defeated Richard Nixon in the 1960 presidential election against John F. Kennedy. And the guy said that he said that the success in life is determined by the way in which a man deals with defeats, which will come to him as they come to everyone. Those who have not experienced some semblance of defeat in their lives usually end up as well-fed house dogs. So to me, people who have not had a lot of defeat may not have a lot of faith either. Mm-hmm. And the people who tend to have the most faith are the ones who have had the most defeats in their life, and they've gotten through it and they've recovered, and then they've tried again. Mm-hmm. Friends like the gentleman that I met, I talked about on a previous podcast. I met him at Pebble Beach playing golf in 2017. And he was like, everybody wants to hear about the successes and the $1 billion exits that we've done as VCs. Nobody ever asks about the 1,100 companies we funded that aren't here anymore. And I was like, God, that is so good. Because every time they wrote a check for one of those companies for tens of millions of dollars per check, they're saying, we believe in you. We think this is going to work. And then 8 months later, 12 months later, they're like, we're out of money and we haven't sold any product and I'm sorry. Right?
Well, every basketball player, how many misses have they made before they become the free throw champions of the and if they were to quit, if they were to say, I've missed 3 in a row, I suck as a professional basketball. I'm never going to be a professional basketball player. I have a friend,
hopefully we'll have him on the podcast, but I have a friend who's a professional baseball player, and I asked him, like, all right, so you go 0 for 4 in a game. What do you tell yourself? What's the narrative? Yeah. Right. And you've done that many times. Like lots of players have gone 0 for 4. And he goes, I just tell myself I'm due because I'm a great hitter.
Yeah.
That's faith.
The mentality. That's
the mentality.
Yeah.
And I love that. Hopefully you guys will get to hear from him coming up in a future show. He's a good friend of mine.
So it sounds to me like the first step, if you're wanting to increase your faith, would be to make sure that as a part of your day, you've built into it some quiet, some reflection time, just some time, even if it's like, okay, before I throw my feet, in a previous episode, we talked about Jolie Morgenstein's book about never checking email in the morning. But before I throw my feet over the side of the bed, I'm going to take a few deep breaths. I'm going to do something that's going to allow me to settle, find my center. Yeah. Before I get started with my day. I know several people who, we all have fallen into the habit of sleeping with our phones, or our phones are like, they plug their phone in a different room. There's these little tricks, these That's right. There's these these things that we can do, these triggers that we know that we have, that we can begin to train ourselves and to begin to say, like, I want more faith in my life. I want to start seeing the glasses being half full and left half empty. I want a reason to believe. And so as a part of what I'm going to do, I'm just going to have some time to not be busy. I'm going to quiet my mind, and I'm going to get started here at this point. Yeah. And I know for you, in the beginning, you would walk. Like, that's such a good way. If you live in a neighborhood, or if you even have a treadmill, or if you have a Peloton or a bike or whatever, like getting up first thing in the morning and going for a walk. We live kind of in a semi-urban neighborhood where there's coffee houses that are pretty close by that we can walk to. A lot of times we'll walk to coffee, or you have put into place. I know we read Tom Rath's book, Eat, Move, Sleep. Yep. And he talks about, if you're going to get a phone call, and if you're a remote worker, take that phone and start walking around your neighborhood. Like, walk. Make sure that you're getting your 10,000 steps a day. Or if you can do it. I got
a stand-up desk.
You have a stand-up desk.
That has helped.
These little things are a part of faith, because they're a part of getting our blood circulating from our entire body. They're bringing clarity. They're bringing, like you said, parity, and it lining up with your values to be able to say, I value myself. I value my faith. I want to become a more positive thinker. And these are the types of things that I can do in order to get there.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And to me, that setting of your intention for the day, I actually do it. I started doing it the night before. So one of my action items that on my checklist is to set up the 3 things that I'm going to try to, and then I'll let my mind work on them all night. Or, if I go to bed at midnight and I wake up at 3, then for 3 hours while I'm sleeping, my mind is working on those intentions. That's faith. I'm using auto-suggestion, Napoleon Hill phrase, to pepper the subconscious mind with belief. And if we get to one of the quotes that I've done on earlier podcasts is from TNT It Rocks the Earth by Claude Bristol, which was a pamphlet done based on a talk that he gave. He dictated the entire pamphlet to his admin in like 5 hours. Start to finish, top to bottom, left to right, done. The whole thing done. One take. And if you don't have a copy of TNT, It Rocks the Earth, the original version, which has a picture of the planet, it's like an orange and green cover, and it's published in 31 or 32.
It is possible to find the PDF online.
Yeah, you can find the PDF for free. And then I have a copy. I think I paid $80 for an original copy of the pamphlet on eBay. And he says in there, if... for him who does not know for what purpose the world exists, does not know who he is. And that was a riddle. That riddle puzzled me for 10 years. Well, what purpose does the world exist? I mean, we live here. So I'm trying to think, for what purpose does the world exist? Do I not know who I am? And then one day, the idea popped into my head. It's here to bring forth. The world's here to bring forth. Mm-hmm. And if we know that the world is here to bring forth, then we know that in the equation are the people who are supposed to sow the seed and take the action in order for the earth to do its part. And the fact that we're taking the seed and sowing it into the earth so that the faith in the seed can become the crop that we want, the faith that we have that the seed knows what it needs to do is faith. That
corn's going to make corn every time.
Corn's going to make corn. Apples are going to make apples. Right?
But they ain't doing nothing if you aren't putting them in the ground.
They're going to make bananas, right? And the monkey says, Kenneth Copeland likes to say, and the monkeys need something to eat.
Yeah.
So that process of seed time and harvest requires faith on the part of the person doing the sowing. It's believing that in 90 days I'm going to have a corn crop, which is why I'm willing to do the work now to not only do the work to sow the seed, but also to let the corn I could be eating die. So that it can accomplish a purpose of multiplication. Sometimes we have to let some of that coffee money die in the form of investments. Sometimes we need to buy podcast equipment, and we need to have lighting and tables, and you gave up your bedroom by itself so we could build a podcast booth so that we can let that effort be sown, and by faith have it multiply into other resources to do other things. So that's what faith is. It's believing that the seed you're putting in the ground is going to produce a harvest, which is why I don't want to eat out, right? More than is necessary. I don't want to spend money. I don't want to do anything unless it's investment that's going to make me more money, or it's a tax write-off, or both.
And I think that our particular bend is based on the word, but in the Bible, because the reality is you can sow good seed and you can sow negative seed. And if you don't have
you're going to sow one or the other.
Either way, you're sowing, no matter what.
That's
you're
right.
sowing. And if you don't have a benchmark, or if you don't have something to check that action against, and a lot of times that'll come in the form of mentorship. Like if you have a mentor you're seeing positive results in their life, and then you can check your gut and you can say, hey, I'm about to sow this seed, and you check it with your mentor, and your mentor says, that's probably not wise. It's good to have mentors to check that up against. It's good to have the word to check that up against. It's good to have other, books and education, and continue that gut check of what seed am I sowing, because how many people
there's community too
to hold accountable to.
It's coaching, it's community, and it's doctrine.
Yeah, 100%. Because how many people, unfortunately, have found themselves in a situation to where they are lost, they've been arrested, they're in prison because they made seed choices that they didn't have anybody to check that seed up against.
That's right.
They didn't have anybody to say whether it was good seed or profitable seed. I think in the scripture it calls it like profitable seed. Like we want to make sure that the seed that we are sowing is in good soil. It is profitable. It is going to do that which it was sent. And we've, through discernment in the faith time, been able to say, this is the lane that we're going to be driving in. But there are so many people out there that are just throwing seed. They're just throwing seed. They don't know if it's good. They don't know if it's bad. They're just throwing it. And so hopefully those types of people will be able to get a hold of this podcast, or they'll be able to get a hold of mentorship, or they'll be able to reach out. And
there's so much good stuff out there.
Out.
I mean, we're doing this podcast because this is a contribution that we have an opportunity to make. We have the resources to do it. We have the time to do it. And I feel like I have paid an insane price in corporate work, and in startups, and in consulting, and in our marriage, and in raising kids, and living in Silicon Valley, and a wife who stays home, and 7 kids that are homeschooled. And I mean, it's an insane price that we've paid. And
it takes an immense amount of faith.
It takes an immense amount of faith to do it. And that doesn't mean that we're any more a lot of people work hard, right? There's single moms, single dads out there that work way harder than we do. But I feel like we have put our shoulder into the work for 25 years, at least.
And there's a reason why. One of those reasons is that it's on your checklist. Because if it wasn't on your checklist, if it wasn't something that you recognized, hey, I value this, I value it enough that I'm going to put it on my daily action items to do something in the area of faith every day. Yeah, and that's all right. We're talking about is that if you happen to value faith as one of your key values, one of the things that you hold near and dear to your heart, make sure to plug it in at some point in your day. It could be at night taking a bath before you go to bed. It could be first thing in the morning when you're waking up. It could be taking a walk.
It could be while you're driving to work, and you just turn this podcast off.
Yeah.
So that you have 10 minutes in the car. Turn me off if you need to.
Bye. No.
See ya.
See ya.
Turn off the noise so that while you're driving to work, you got 10 minutes to just take a breath and go, all right, I'm going to get a coffee. Everything's going to be good. And by the way, if you're exhausted first thing in the morning, I've been there many times. I did 2 all-nighters last week for work, and all-nighters are not like, sleeping a little bit. It's like all night, and then I catch up the next day. I did 2 all-nighters last week. There's many of you out there that are working all night or working 2 hours, 3-hour day of sleeping, and that's all you get. When I was delivering newspapers for North County Times, sometimes I'd close up the restaurant, did my side work at 11:15, and I'd have to be up at 2:15 to throw newspapers.
Mark's laughing right now.
I'm sure Mark is laughing. He loves the newspaper, the paper route story.
That'll be for a whole. We could dedicate an entire episode to the many jobs.
If you're delivering newspapers while you listen to this
Heilman
podcast, I just take my hat off and honor you for delivering newspapers while you're doing it. I've done it myself, and I applaud your efforts. But if you're exhausted first thing in the morning driving to work, there are recovery cycles that are available to you in 4 areas: physical, by sleeping, obviously, but also by lifting heavy things. We have engineered as a society all physical labor out of our lives for anybody who works indoors. I
don't even have to go get my groceries. I can go online and have them brought out to my car.
I don't even have to cook. I just have you do it.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, groceries show up at our house, and food shows up in my mouth.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna be like those Wally, those guys driving around on their little whatever they are,
little recliner scooters, but lifting heavy things.
Yeah,
whether it's at the gym or doing yoga poses or whatever, do 25 or 30 squats.
We'll have to have Christopher on the show.
I would love to have Christopher on the podcast.
When we cover that week of
health, we'll have him on.
Have him talking. Have him help walk us through talking about the importance.
I've never seen a transition like that in my life from somebody.
Yeah,
at
from
50
a
years
smoker
old,
and
smoked like he was on fire and drank like he was trying to put it out, and
having faith that life could be better.
That he was melted vanilla ice cream is what he calls himself, and then to go from that to a beastly body. So he's got huge guns.
Next week, I'm glad that we got to talk about faith. If anybody has any more questions about faith or getting more in tune with their faith, please don't hesitate to reach out. The next number 2 on your list was health, and so we will talk about that in the next episode. We will talk all about health and what Jeff has been able to go through in being a professional golfer and having to put health as a priority.
Just dealing with stress. Professional dealer.
Deal with stress.
Professional dealer with stress.
Stress dealer. Yeah. Not dealing it out.
Dealer with her.
Dealer with her. Being a father of 7 children, being a husband of 27 years, just having to be put up with the demand that living in one of the most highest priced places in the entire country and having a wife stay home.
Most people would own 2 houses for what we pay to rent one.
Yeah. And there's just so much importance on health. Obviously, you couldn't get to step 2 without step 1, which was to have the faith and the belief that you could even do it and to begin with. Yeah. And that's what this episode was all about today.
I just want to
believe that you can do it.
I want to let people out there who are listening to this just understand. I had a buddy of mine, Scott, picked up the phone and called. A buddy of mine, Kyle, picked up the phone and called and appreciated what we're doing here. Life is hard, and it's okay that it's hard. And if we think that it's never supposed to be hard, or why is it so hard for me, I'll just tell you, it's hard for everybody at times. Everybody has a hard life at times. I have a friend of mine who is the great grandson of a founder of one of the biggest banks in the world. His great or great grandfather founded one of the biggest banks in the world, and it'll remain nameless, and he'll remain nameless. But he's a friend of mine, and he has to work 60 and 70 hours a week to make sure that he manages the family office, which is their investments, and that he gives away enough money so that they keep their tax-free charter. Wow. He has to give away a certain amount of money every year, and he gives away too much money, then he's eating into the investments. And if he doesn't give away enough money, they lose their state charter that they've had in their family for 100 years, which allows them to basically be philanthropic, a huge philanthropy, and it's enormous fund, but they have to properly give away. And then the big question is, how do you give away money without doing more harm in the giving of the money than you're doing good by the hope of being the philanthropist? And this wears, and does he have a helicopter? Yeah. Does he have a huge house on the beach and a country club membership at places that people can't get into? Yeah, he's got all that stuff, but life is hard.
Yeah. I
have to give away X number of dollars every year and try with the moral compass based on his values to not do harm, to not give the money away to people who aren't going to use it for more good in their hands than it would be in somebody else's. That is a daunting task if you really look at the weight of it. So even people with a lot of bucks, even people with a lot of health. I know people that live in Bali and they're digital and social media marketers that make $1.5 million a year, and they don't even work because all of their systems are automated and their peoples are there. Their life is hard. They're dealing with emotional stuff.
Well, there's a scripture that says that everybody it comes with persecutions. Everything physical, everything tangible. If it has an ion in it, if it has an atomic particle, if it has a neutron, if it has a neutron in it, if it is physical, it will eventually die. It will corrode. It will break. There is persecution built into every little thing that we deal with, every little person that we are. If it's not physical, it's health. If it's not, and so what we have got to come to realize is that life is hard, but that you have friends and that you have family, and that there is hope for you, and you can reach out and you can press play. 100%. You can call us. You can
and your
reach
faith
out to us.
Your faith
will help you get through that.
Will help you get through it, and you can build it. There's one verse that says, "Every man's been given the measure of faith." The measure being singular, and every man being everybody, male and female alike. So if you're alive and listening to this podcast, you have the measure of faith, and it's up to us. How do you take that measure of faith and grow it? You renew your mind to the word and to an understanding of where you're going and what your goals and values are.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Can't wait to see you next week when we talk about health. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing your wisdom with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for running the podcast. It's fun. I'm enjoying it. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.